I don't think The Acolyte should be canceled. Hear me out, all right? I think it should be retconned. And I know there are a lot of big arguments about Star Wars and Marvel and the way things are going recently. One side's calling the other side's bigots and racists, and the other side's calling people shills in Disney's pocket. I want to be clear with you. I'm not really interested in that argument. I really don't care about that. But I have a very strong logical argument for retconning The Acolyte, and I honestly think it would be in Disney's best interest long term. Let me explain. I am afraid that this next part is not up for debate. The Acolyte is poorly written. Objectively. Before we get into that, I just really want to clarify, are you allowed to like The Acolyte? Sure thing. You could love it. But the fact that you love it is not indicative of good writing. Like, for instance, I enjoy The Phantom Menace, and I don't think it's a masterpiece in writing. I love that movie for other reasons. Let's take, for instance, the scene where Osha crashes down on her ship. As it's crashing, she buckles herself in what appears to be a seat with a 4-point harness. Then when we revisit her, however, after, she wakes up outside of the harness. See, this makes the viewer curious, like as if they missed something, waiting for the gap of information to be filled. But the gap between these two things just never gets filled. How did she get out of the harness? Especially in what seems to be a relatively non-violent way considering the crash that she went through. She woke up right in front of it. Did a piece of flying debris just happen to skillfully cut all points of her harness without injuring her at just the right time so she would slump out of her chair and then fall in the exact right position so that the camera could get a shot of her sitting up? Did someone just cut her out in an act of heroism? Did she come to, get herself out of the straps, then immediately faint? Honestly, there's no answer, and the consistency doesn't matter to the writers at all. Another example of this writing is when she wakes up, this time for real, but in the same spot. You didn't hear that wrong. She wakes up twice in the episode. This means that this first time that she woke up, it was a dream, which might confuse viewers because you might wonder how. How did she know if she was unconscious in this time in her dream? How did she know that she had fallen out of the chair or somehow been in this spot before she actually was conscious of being in that spot? Which is why the most logical conclusion that we can come to about this problem is that the ship crashed, she unbuckled all points of her harness, and then immediately decided to take a nap. That's the most logical, sane conclusion to this writing. She got tired from the crash, man. Wouldn't you? Jeez, why do we have to make a big thing out of it? But the truth is, the writers most likely just wanted to show the shot where she sits up towards the camera because it was more dramatic than her waking up in the spot that she should have woke up in. I mean, it seems like I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, right? One who is faithful in very little is also faithful in much, and one who is dishonest in very little is also dishonest in much. In this context, that means if you fail to think about how the small things are important, how much more will you treat the important things with the same carelessness? We're basically letting the viewer know that pretty much nothing on screen matters. Nothing should be taken seriously or tracked the way our brains are wired to do so. See, our brains are wired for this causality, this cause and effect relationship. See, if the writers ignore the relationship between cause and effect on screen entirely, as we see here in just this tiny example, then they'll be able to write whatever they want, and they're no longer going to be bound by the pedestrian pursuit of relaying meaning through information on the screen. I need to zoom into that. Since nothing on screen can be trusted then, since the writers said so themselves, the only thing left to do to give your viewer information to understand the story is, you guessed it, dialogue. Exposition dumping. That is a terrible dialogue bubble. We all love exposition dumping, right? This show is written as if the characters are narrators in their own story. This means like everything that comes out of their mouths is explaining who they are, where they are, how they got there, why they're doing what they're doing, and what they plan on doing very soon. For instance, in the scene where two Jedi Knights come to arrest or interrogate Osha for the murder of her master because she was a Jedi Knight.
So how long have you been a mechanic?
A better way to start this scene would be with a question directly related to the current pursuit of the Jedi, which would be finding the murderer. So you might say something like, where were you at 500 hours 2 cycles ago? Sure, this line gets right to the point as to why the Jedi are there, but the problem is this line gets right to the point as to why the Jedi are there, and the writers need to pad the story. Otherwise, if we don't pad it, it's going to be a 3-minute long episode.
Since I left the Order, so 6 years.
This line is absurdly obtuse. In this line, we discover she's a former Jedi, which means she knows her. Because she's a Jedi, which means she knows when she left the Order, which means this entire line is for the audience exposition, and she didn't even need to ask that question.
Dangerous job.
This line is even dumber. She's a Jedi. That's arguably the most dangerous and high-risk job in the entire galaxy. She's literally currently investigating a potential murder suspect.
Look, I was trained to be a Jedi.
The Jedi knows Osha trained to be a Jedi. That's the entire reason why they're there, because a Force user murdered their master. If they didn't know she was a Jedi, or even that she was a mechanic, they wouldn't be there.
When that didn't pan out, those skills aren't exactly transferable. I needed a paycheck.
Oh my goodness. The traits of a Jedi aren't transferable? Are we kidding here? Most would say that the skills of a Jedi are not only transferable to a few jobs, but to most jobs. A Jedi isn't just waving a lightsaber around. I can think of 9 skills off the top of my head that are highly transferable. Emotional intelligence, for instance, conflict resolution, agility, strategic thinking, focus, discipline, problem solving under pressure, ethical judgment.
When did you join the Order?
This woman has a tablet with the very information she's looking to acquire. It's in front of her face. We often see this technique on, what's that great? I think it's called Dora the Explorer.
When I was 8, Lord knows all of this.
In this line, the writers use a technique called lamp shading. It's when a character within the story makes a remark regarding the believability of the writing of said story. It's dialogue designed to calm the audience down so they don't get upset when there's exposition dumping, and they could just dump a little bit more. And they took a dump on it.
A major concern about admitting you to the Order was your age.
See, she had the information there right in front of her on that tablet all along.
And the fact that you were mourning.
So they not only have the details of Osha and how she left the Order and when and why, but also they have information about her internal experience as well. Don't tell the audience what the character is feeling. Show them. But it's especially poor writing when one of the characters on screen tells the other character on screen what they're feeling.
My circumstances were unique, but the Jedi Council made their decision.
Again, he knows this. So why do we say it? Oh, that's right, because the audience doesn't know it. Now it's time for our magnum opus, our pièce de résistance, our cherry on top. This is an actual line that Yord, one of the Jedi, says in this, and I quote, I'm gonna read it verbatim. Yord, you lost your entire family, your mothers, your sisters, your village, all died in the fire before Master Soul brought you into the Jedi. Your training was difficult, to say the least. Attachments to those we have lost are the most difficult to let go. Are they? Oh, really? Did she get a head injury before she came into this scene? Why is he telling her this? Like if it was that traumatic, bro, it's literally written in stone in her mind. Truly remarkable, this is. So, if you're curious, this right here is what the scene looks like fully written out. And this right here is what the scene should have been with skilled writing. How they managed to poorly write every single line of this scene is absolutely mind-boggling. Every single line was objectively the wrong choice. And I could do this with almost every scene in the entire episode. Almost every line. I don't want to, but I think this is proof enough that the Acolyte at a scene and line-by-line level is poorly written. Disney, this is your company. But every single day this is out. More and more people watch it. And the more people that watch it, the more people lose interest in Star Wars, a property that you have invested billions of dollars in. And not just movies, but theme parks, merch, TV shows. With every passing day, you don't take this down, you are churning through the only audience you have left. Anyways, let's move on. I am about as hardcore of a Star Wars fan as you can be. But to the disservice of this show, I am a hardcore fan of story and truth first. So when a property like Star Wars doesn't tell a good story, or worse, doesn't put truth in their story, to me, like I said, it's an abomination. This is an opportunity to communicate to incoming writers from all sides that telling the truth in your story is paramount. Not just morally, but get this, and you're going to love this, also financially. Good stories tell the truth. There's no such thing as a well-written story where there isn't a universal truth at its core. Furthermore, this is the part you care about, Disney, so pay attention closely. When a story that is fundamentally built on a lie is written, it doesn't make money. So what do I mean by telling the truth in a story and telling a lie in a story? I mean, at the fundamental level, what is the moral premise of the story? Stanley Williams, a very skilled writer and teacher, articulates this moral premise in what I think is a beautiful and elegant and simple way with an equation. Vice leads to defeat, but virtue leads to success. You fill in vice, you fill in defeat, you fill in what the virtue is, and you fill in what success looks like when you're virtuous. And this is what the universal truth of a story breaks down to. For instance, let's break down some past Star Wars movies. Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Episode 4, A New Hope. Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Episode 6. Despite what you feel about any of these movies, and even their scenes and writing and dialogue or whatever, their inherent moral core is truth. Telling the truth in your story is the bedrock of writing. If you fail at this step, the damage is irreparable. Like, no amount of character, dialogue, plot, special effects, whatever you can do, nothing will cover you getting this step wrong. I read a comment a while back while watching some She-Hulk review. The comment struck me really hard, and I think it applies to this show as well. The comment was, "This show feels like villains attempting to write heroes." I mean, that's poetry. The writers of this story don't care enough about what's true. They have no grasp on truth, what is true or what is good, and they don't even care about what is good. They care what's good for them and their agenda. Guess who else thinks like that? Well, every well-written villain and antagonist in any decent story that has truth in it, ironically enough. That's what makes villains. They care more about what's good for themselves and their tribe's agenda more than they care about the good for the whole of everyone. And then they try to pass it off as if what's good for the tribe is good for everyone. And that's just not how reality works. You see, what is true is what's universally good for everyone. But if you don't believe in a higher power, then this is probably going to be a major point of contention for you. And things will quickly devolve into situational, circumstantial, and then cultural morality. And we all know where that leads. Actually, I'm about to show you. I believe the core of this issue is the inability to discern the difference between these two things. Truth and my truth. You don't have truth. You have experiences. And while it may, in fact, have happened to you, and you may, in fact, have experienced these things and those feelings and those emotions, those things aren't truth. A person cannot be a source of truth. Truth is something that exists outside of us. We can channel truth through us, but make no mistake, it's not coming from you. And if you think truth comes from you, that's akin to you saying you're God. Like, if you think you're God, then why wouldn't you just define what truth is for yourself and impose that upon the world? The problem is most audiences can identify, at least at a subconscious level, when there isn't truth. I find that people who disagree consciously still subconsciously agree and get upset when there's not truth. And guess what? Nobody wants to watch it. Nobody wants to suggest it. And the movie flops. And as a storyteller in any medium, it's your job to channel truth. A writer doesn't just have words flow through them. They have truth flow through them. That's what makes story good. Audiences don't go to the movie just to be entertained. They go to be encouraged, enlightened, edified through an experience that is physically and to a degree emotionally safe. We consume stories because it allows us to build mental models of navigating the world. If stories are told right, you gain the invaluable currency of wisdom for virtually nothing of what it cost the person who wrote it. But this is what stories have become. They've taken the wisdom, the courage, the love, the truth right out of it, and they haven't even replaced it with anything. So it's no surprise why these movies and shows feel hollow, like they've been morally hollowed out. And this is why it's no surprise why the people you see fighting for shows like The Acolyte to become popular and have additional seasons, they have no interest in truth, but a massive interest in perpetuating whatever new ideology is culturally taken hold. But this show is worse than that. The Acolyte isn't just morally hollowed out. It's not morally neutral, like the onslaught of mediocrity that we're getting from Hollywood these days. They have hollowed out the morality with The Acolyte and filled it with ideology. What's the moral truth of this show? The main character rides off into the sunset with the villain. Villains don't get happy ever after endings. And it's not because no one's ever thought of it. The root of all of these evils is selfishness and fear, caring more about your safety, security, and pain and pleasure than other people's. And in reality, the consequence of this selfishness always leads to destruction, loss, humiliation, tyranny, chaos, conflict, and always death. But you say, Matthias, bad guys get away with doing bad things all the time. No, they don't. Physically, maybe, but not spiritually. If someone steals a ton of money and they get away with it, they still lose. They'll always lose. Why? Because the entire reason why people lie, cheat, and steal is to obtain security, safety, and joy. And irony, in all of its glory, will never deliver security, safety, and joy. A man who lies will always end up alone. A man who steals will always be haunted by insecurity. A man who abuses will never know joy. This is the causality of spiritual laws in effect. That's not up for debate. That's how reality unfolds. You don't get to change that. But this show tried to change that. It's filled with selfishness leading to success and victory and new beginnings. And so it's no surprise to me that a show that glorified these things, or selfishness, led to failure. Did you catch it? That's what makes truth so beautiful. You can't supersede it. The writers attempted to inject ideology into what they thought should be truth, and truth still won in the end. Let's put a bow on this puppy and use the equation. Selfishness and ideology leads to poor writing and cancellation, but truth in your writing leads to good writing and renewal. I don't care what these ideologies are personally, and I honestly think most people don't. They just don't want anything to do with it. And I don't blame them. Retconning this abomination is not only the moral thing to do in this circumstance, it's the thing that's going to teach some people in Hollywood that truth matters and fix your relationship with your audience. Sure, I agree. We want perspective and worldviews in writing, and we want to see the writer's interpretation of reality, for sure. But we also want to see the underlying fundamental mechanics of what makes reality reality, which is truth. See, Disney, if you want to make some money, hire some writers that know the difference. I should drop this.